Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you're enjoying your day one of ClioCon so far. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with three lovely legal professionals who have a lot of experience when it comes to a law firm operations and getting processes in place to increase efficiency, make an impact, and avoid burnout. I'm Maggie Javid. I'm the VP of Business Operations at Clio, and I'll be your host for this session. And part of my role at Clio is that I am to enable the rest of the business to do what they do best and help all our customers. So I get really energized today because I get to speak and talk to a lot of you folks about Clio and about some of the business problems that you have every day and how you're looking for technology to fix it. So super energized to be here today. So who in our audience today, just so we can get an idea who we're presenting today, I wanted to ask all of you a few questions. So put your hands up today. Who is a solo lawyer? Just yourself. Great. And who works at a small firm? And who works at a mid-sized firm, would you say? Okay, that's great. And finally, who has any inefficiencies at their law firm? Do you think that you're looking to solve today? Yeah? I know here at Clio, we have lots of things we're still trying to improve every day. So we'll start with a quick introduction of our panelists, and we'll dive right into our panel discussion. And then with 20 minutes left, we'll go to the audience, to all of you, and see if you have any questions for our panel today. So first off, I'd like to introduce Brian King from King Law. Brian, could you spend a few minutes to tell us about yourself and your law firm and what clientele you serve?
Thanks, Maggie. I actually appreciate that lovely legal professional that you called me earlier. I rarely get that from anybody. So I'm really excited to be here at ClioCon. My name's Brian King. I'm at King Law Offices. We have 16 locations across North and South Carolina. I was at the very first ClioCon back in Chicago. I was one of those ones. I think I saw the back of my head on the earlier video Jack did. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about operations. I started off in 2002 in a one-room above a bar, and the first King Law Office advertisement was me going to the local Lowe's and getting black stickers and writing King Law Offices across the front. We're now over a $10 million organization a year with, like I said, 43 different attorneys now, although if anybody knows the market, I just don't answer the phone anymore. We'll see how that increases and decreases. And I love law firm operations. I love to see a lot of small firms, which is still where my heart is, and a lot of the solos and those things. Can't wait to take questions from everybody, kind of talk about how we got from where we are and how Clio has really just made that and paved that pathway for us.
Thank you, Brian. And Lydia, if you wanted to introduce yourself today.
Hi, I'm Lydia Burton. I am Chief of Staff at Tong Family Law Group. We are a small family law firm in the San Francisco Bay Area, specializing in complex asset dissolution. But I am kind of a legal tech and legal ops nerd. I have been in this for a while and was able to partner with our founding attorney to launch a cloud-based firm during COVID, and our goal was to make this the law firm that we wanted to work at. So we kind of burned out from the big firm and the traditional model. And I think our legal techs, our ops, and our processes have enabled us to have an abundance of work-life balance. And I'm really excited about what that can look like in other small firms, because I know it can be done, and it can be done where we are happy, balanced people that still are doing great legal work and serving our clients.
Great, thank you. And Katie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Katie Brennan, and I am from Denver, Colorado. I've worked in family law firms primarily for a little over 10 years now. I work at Marquez Law currently, we only have 2 attorneys right now, but I did come from a larger firm, and talk about work-life balance and burnout. I acted as the chief operations officer at that firm, and you can really see how inefficiencies can lead to a lot of that burnout. And being in a smaller firm now, it allows you to have a lot more, me to have a lot more of that work-life balance and that focus. And yeah, so primarily we work with family law clients.
That's great, thank you. And so now I wanted to dig in. You all have different experience, you play different roles at your firms. You've probably seen a lot of different processes out there. For any folks maybe moving into a new law firm, you're kind of assessing the current state. What do you think would be a first area of focus that you would be looking to go to of a particular process you wanted to improve?
I'll jump in first. I mean, those early stages of a law firm are so important. As an attorney, a lot of times, why? The first question is, why am I in this position? Why am I starting out on my own? There's a lot of different reasons why it comes in, and a lot of reasons why an attorney puts themselves in that spot. And I remember that early time. And I remember just so many mistakes that you make. The first thing that I would say is that, it is the hardest part, and that is to take a step back and really think about things and what your vision is going to be, and starting at that vision. And it's so hard because I know for me, I had a young family. I had to start, and I had a lot of responsibilities and student loans and all those kind of things back then. And if you're in that spot, I would say that first of all, kudos for being here because you are thinking about your firm, and that would be step one. The second thing is who am I going to put there with me? And I think that attorneys get so caught up in the practice of law that I've got to have a paralegal. I've got to have somebody who's helping me along the way. And the first and most important thing is you're going to get paid. That all of the things that we're talking about is not going to make any difference unless you get paid. And I think that first initial step needs to be, how am I going to get paid? How am I going to make money? How am I going to meet the dreams and visions that I want? I'm more financially rewarded than I ever thought that I'd be. But I remember that first year, my goal was to make $50,000. Not for me. I'm talking about the whole firm to make $50,000. My payroll is $400,000 a month now. So I remember putting a chart up and saying, okay, what are we going to do? So operations needs to be at least in part focused because I want to practice law. That's why a lot of you want to do it, so you can help clients. So you need to find somebody who can understand and probably wear a lot of hats. And that first hat's probably going to be an accounting piece and an operations piece. And you're going to need to find somebody. And that's why I'm so excited to have Lydia and Katie here, because you guys are that first piece. And I love to hear, Katie, about we're starting this new firm, kind of putting that together, because I would say that those attorneys made the right decision in saying, I need to get somebody who understands and puts together this from an operations standpoint. But before I would go and hire somebody that's the best paralegal, I would find the person who's the best accountant and who can run the office, and most importantly, can tell me no. So, no, you can't take that client. No, you can't buy that copy machine or whatever it is that you need. You need somebody who's able to do that. That's step one.
That's why I was the first employee of our firm. Before any paralegals, before any legal assistants, before another associate, before anything else, the very first thing we did was operations. Mm-hmm. And to agree with Brian, my number one goal is to get paid. My number one goal is not to help clients because I don't have any. And I think having a person like that at your firm really, really protects it as a business. And I think, especially when you are in a small to mid-sized firm or a solo, you only have so much human capital, right? We only have so many hours in the day that we're functional, on it, doing our best work. And so you have to use that wisely. So your systems, your processes, and your operations, the places where technology can do things, technology needs to be doing it because we cannot burn out our people having them do repetitious things over and over and over again. It's just not the smartest use of time. And so our number one thing is absolutely like, how do we get paid? And I very proudly have a 100% collection rate. Thank you, Cleo. So, I mean, that is like the number one thing that I think really streamlining your operations does, is that it increases your efficiencies, it gets you paid. I think the first approach, though, that I have is super easy to come to an event like this and see everything downstairs on the floor and all the ways that this can innovate your firm and make it newer, bigger, faster, shinier. And I think the first thing you have to do is take a step back and observe. What are we already using? What processes? What's working? What's not working? Because you can really want to come in and be like, we're going to get 7 new systems and we're going to do all the integrations and it's going to be great.
Please don't do that.
But you don't really know where in each firm, where are your inefficiencies? And that might be different at Katie's firm than it is at my firm, than it is at Bryant's firm. But if we are too innovation driven, which I hesitate to say because it's just where I really enjoy getting into, but if we're too innovation driven before we actually take a step back and look, what are we doing here? What is working? What is not working? And then I always tend to say, who are your lowest paid people? Go ask them. I guarantee the lowest paid people in all of your firms are the ones who have their pulse on the operational inefficiencies and what is not working. And we are using people there usually to fix those little glitches, and on the higher level, you might not even realizing it. You're like, oh my gosh, my legal assistant is manually doing what? Mm-hmm. I had no idea that was a problem. I had no idea they were spending 6 hours a week doing this tiny thing that we could solve with this problem. So I think talking to your people that are not your attorneys, observing, taking that feedback, because those people know, I promise. And they're the ones burning themselves out on things that really can be quick technology fixes. But yeah,
it's interesting that you say that because that's actually was my role at this larger firm that I'm speaking about. Is that's where I got my start, is in that position. I was asked about and I had more time on my hands, and so it's kind of, you have to listen to your people, dive into where those pain points are, where the bottlenecks are, how to make that streamline, more efficient. Maybe that's a new system. Maybe it's something that you can use with your existing programs. You have to start with the current state and look at where you're at, what you can make better now. In fact, you may be using Clio or a different system, and you just need to maximize your use of that system. A lot of people are spending a lot of money on these fancy bells and whistles that are actually costing you more money and causing more problems than they're solving. So it is important to start at your baseline and see what needs to be changed, because you start throwing in all these integrations that are just ultimate. And a lot of you, it seemed like a lot of you are solo firms, but some of you are part of firms. You have a team, listen to the team, figure out, to your point, is kind of like a lot of attorneys or leadership maybe using the system differently than the support staff. And that's really where a lot of the inefficiencies can come up. And if you're able to identify how to use the system more efficiently, or really streamline those workflows, you're going to be saving a ton of money for not only yourselves but for your clients, and you're able to get home to your families and come to conferences and things like that.
That's great, thank you. Maybe tell us a little bit more, some examples. So some of these, I don't know what people's experience. It's easy for, like, when you say streamline workflows, okay, I know what that means, and efficiencies, but maybe some real life examples might be good for the folks here. Maybe I'll start off with you, Brian. Maybe what's one example do you think that in your last few years in running your practice, like some really big success stories of streamlining some processes?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think, and unfortunately, in some ways, unfortunately, that's what I do now, that at this point, I'm not in the courtroom very often. I'm not, the things that I love doing and I still can do from time to time. But I do a lot of just talking and asking questions and just staying curious about my own business. Because one of the things I remember, Stephen Fairley, his brother is here today. told me is that you have you have the firm you think you have the firm that they tell you have, and you have the firm that you actually have. And what you need to be spending your time is trying to determine, what firm do I actually have? I know for us, one of the things that we do that I consider one of our most important systems is that we bill all of our clients weekly. So, and I was told by many other attorneys you can't do that. Let me tell you, we have 4,000 clients, 4,000 active clients, and we bill them all weekly. So every Thursday, we have a system that makes it work. And we have an accounting team that all works from home in different locations, and they put together that billing process. And with Clio and QuickBooks Online is the organization that we have, put together by several different, this was a little bit beyond the skills that I had individually. And I remember these meetings where I said, look, I promise you, our clients in Appalachia of North Carolina, they can't afford our services. They can't afford our services. We need to be able to get them in a situation where it can be broken down in a way that we can get paid. I don't get 100%, but we get about 86%, and I'm pretty happy with that. But we bill, and what we did was we sat down and said, okay, what's this going to look like? And we went through it, and we went through it. And it was tough meetings. I remember one time walking out of the door and having to go walk for a mile and come back because I was like, look, we're going to make this happen. And fortunately, you have a good partner like Clio to make that happen. And you put it together, and there's packets of information and clients. And honestly, it looks like a beautiful mind if you've matched this thing up behind me of what it is. But it's as simple as can be to me and most importantly, my clients. That they now get a text message saying, you paid this week. You want to know more? Hit here. And it breaks down. It shows everything that happened to that. Because some clients don't need anything more than just that text to pay. But some clients need to see every bit of it, everything that happened, every hour that was billed, every person that was on that. And so being able to set that up, it took months to put it together. But its application, it could be done from anybody. If you came in within a week, we'd have you ready and understand exactly what that's going to look like. That's just a small example in some ways. In other words, it's a huge example of taking a huge project with nothing more than just a dream. This is what we're going to do. This is what the outcome's going to be, and putting together the right team and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together a very simple plan that it could be mapped out behind you, but everybody needs to feel it as being habit. And now my attorneys, my case managers, and most importantly my clients, it's just part of the habit. That's just what you get when you have King Law.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like the client experience also benefited from this.
Well, that was the driving force.
Okay.
You start with the client. What does the client need? And then you make your system. Not because I wanted something brilliant, but clients will tell you this is what I need. What they don't need is a surprise at the end of the month. They needed to be able to see and guide it on. We do family law. That changes happen, from Monday to Thursday. And the weekend, everything changes again. So knowing that, you have to be ready for that kind of action. You have to be able to see, this is what my client needs. Now, let's make it happen. Call Vancouver. Our CPA firm in Toronto, in Chicago, helped put it together and made it work in the mountains of North Carolina.
That's great. Thank you. And what about you, Lydia? What could you maybe give us a real life example for the folks here?
For us, the name of the game is really automate and outsource. I have met with every single person we hire, and we consider every one of our employees to be a strategic partner and an intentional addition to our firm. And they're professionals, and so I want them to be doing the work that they want to do, and that they enjoy doing, and that they're good at, because that's where the client gets the best service, and that's where my staff is the happiest. Anything else I want to get rid of. It's just a waste of my people, right? And so I find that when I can outsource or automate something, that has been a huge game changer for our firm operations. I no longer have legal staff, for instance, like a real life example, we don't do trial binders anymore in-house. Why? Am I going to use somebody who I value as a professional and a member of our team to essentially sit there at a copier and a hole punch all day? It is just a waste of our time. There are services that do that. I want human beings doing things that only human beings can do in our firm. And everything else has got to go somewhere else. Technology, outsourcing, automating. If I'm asking somebody to do something 2 or 3 times, that is an automation. And so it's constantly looking for those little things and constantly talking to people. And are you spending your time doing your best work, where you have the best skill sets, where we really need human eyes on this, human hands doing this? And if not, that is an inefficiency in your firm. And so like a small example for that is trial binders. Our billing process is very seamless and very automated. And anywhere we can take people out of things that can be streamlined with tech, we do, because there's so much about this business that is people-oriented, right? We're all of our clients are people, and all of our staff are people. And so I find that clients get the best service with happy attorneys and happy support staff. And if I am burning out my paralegals and my legal assistants doing menial, repetitive things, nobody's having a good time. Not us, not them, not our clients. And so anywhere that I can find those things that I'm like, you know what, you've done that 2, 3 times. There's got to be a better way to not have you, doing that over and over and over again. And so for each firm, that might be different. But I think that finding those spots in your firm and really talking to your people, like, what do you enjoy doing? How can we make sure we are maximizing your time, where all of your time in your day is spent doing these things that only you can do, that you do really well, and where can I throw the rest of it so that we're not dealing with it anymore?
Great, thank you. And Katie?
And ultimately, you're going to be saving your clients more money, so not only being staff-focused, but also client-focused. But one thing that I'm going to tell you, like just speaking to kind of the billing process that I got super jazzed about, is that we were using this system that was not Clio, and it was quite antiquated, and it was very expensive. And we weren't using it to its fullest potential. And what we would do when I was first brought on board was all the billing statements were printed out, hard copy, and I hope none of you are doing that. But so it would go out to the attorneys, and they'd have to make manual notes on these stacks of paper, which would then go back to this other staff member, and they'd have to go and make all of those edits in the system. And it's just, the most mind-boggling inefficiency that I've ever seen. And so that's just an example of how you can take something that is just massively tedious and really freeing up so much time to do a lot of those substantive things, and allow your attorneys to do what they do best and what they're here to do, which is to practice law. And so as much as you can, that's just an example, as much as you can streamline those things, you're going to reduce the number of errors, you're going to save a lot of money for your clients, and it makes so much more sense to adopt as many tools or leverage as much technology as you can. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to interrupt those workflows with a new fancy shiny tool or integration, but as much as you're able to adopt technology and reduce the amount of paper and about the manual entry and the manual work, it's going to just make everybody happier. It's all a win-win.
That's great. I also, after I've been hearing you folks speak for the last, it was 20 minutes now, we're into the conversation, I've heard burnout a lot. This could really mitigate burnout, and a lot of you folks were talking about that. Was that the intention in any kind of fixing out any efficiencies or processes, or was that just more of an outcome that you found after doing this as well?
I think it's kind of a little bit of both,
Yeah.
It's just a net positive. And I've had employees that have threatened to quit in the past, and you guys may have experienced that as well, of just, they go home and they're angry at their families because the work life is just so stressful, and there is all those teasies. Nobody likes to spend their time doing all of these little manual notes. Your staff's not going to be fulfilled and happy doing those kinds of tedious administrative tasks. So I think that in itself leads to burnout, is you're just not fulfilled in your role. And again, being able to streamline and make those processes more efficient, or outsourcing, like completely eliminating those really tedious administrative tasks. As much as you can eliminate those things, you're going to get a lot more fulfillment out of your staff and for yourself too.
I think for us, that is absolutely, avoiding burnout is at the forefront of everything we do, because we are a firm that was born of burnout. Our founding attorney and myself left a large firm during COVID, and we're just like, something's got to give. This is not sustainable. This is not okay. And I can't live like this anymore. And so that has kind of been at the forefront of how we do everything. And we firmly believe that attorneys are not the only people deserving of autonomy, respect, and work-life balance. That I am never going to ask any of my staff to do something that I would not do myself. And so if I wouldn't do it myself, then I'm not going to ask somebody else to do it. And so I think really considering that all of our people are working adult professionals that deserve to be treated with respect, and like their time in their life has value outside of their job, has been absolutely like the forefront of what we do. We wanted this to be a firm that we wanted to work at, that if I wasn't running this firm, I would want to work here. And I mean, I'm sure other people are dealing with hiring right now, and hiring in the last year, finding qualified talent and getting people to work with you instead of all of the many other places that they could, because it feels like everybody's trying to hire right now. So there's no shortage of jobs for qualified people. And if you don't make your firm somewhere where people feel valued as the individual that they are, where they feel like they are being utilized to their best ability and where they're happy, you're not going to keep them, because there's just plenty of other jobs. So I think that has been really, really like the peak of our focus, is how do we just do this differently? We're not going to keep doing this the same way it's always been done just because it's been done that way. If somebody has a good argument for why something should be done a different way, like, we're going to listen. And I think that has been just really rewarding. I think we have a very, even virtually, our Slack is going all day, and we just have very like a good community in our office space, even though none of us have ever even like literally worked in the same office together. And I think that is because we really, really place the highest value on our people. I think that is the biggest asset we have in our law firms, is our people.
Isn't it amazing how different that experience can be, though, coming from a place of burnout and like changing that environment to something,
absolutely,
like how much better it could be, like
like if we look, we're all living, breathing people, and if we look in nature, anything that is giving more than it is taking is dying, right? So I mean, if you have a plant that is expending more than it is taking in, it's dying. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we're doing that to our people. We're asking them to push people to their limits every day. Well, can you just stay 5 more minutes this time? Well, can you just do it this time? I know it's after hours, but can I just call you this time? Can I just? And it's like, no.
The revolving door kind of culture,
absolutely,
where you're just
the slippery
in this
slope
state of hiring and firing, or like,
because people are unhappy. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like, you want to talk about bottlenecks and things like that, get onboarding new people, having to train them onto your systems and all of these things. So it's like, implementing all these things is great, but if you can't keep your people,
that's the most expensive part right there.
100%. And
it's so hard to really kind of take that. And I, one of the things I think that is so difficult too is that the public themselves is different than it was when I started practicing law. I think I saw like a little cartoon of like Superman was bringing him down there from a burning building and said like, "Thanks, Superman, for saving my life, but 3 stars, my house is 3 blocks over." And I think that that's kind of what our situation is that, I think that I see my young associates and they feel like they're being graded by every client. They feel like that they're, that the public has become such a high burden. And I think that sometimes we have that sort of client-centered format that we forget that a lot of this is about our team. That our client, and certainly at the point where I am, my clients are my team. And it's really important that they feel empowered, that they can make decisions. You know, one of the small things that I think that we did that when I started practicing, because the same thing was at other firm, and I said, anybody can fire a client in our firm. Anybody.
Same.
Doesn't matter if it's our own intake team, whatever it is, you can fire a client. And, you know, just to give people the power to be able to say, like, look, you know what? You are more important than any of the things going on, including the client. Now, in our everyday job, serving that client is so important that we know that you know, the people in here today are taking notes and and probably the decision makers. But there's probably somebody back at the office taking phone calls from people because you're not there. And the public can be such a heavy burden that I think that attorneys, the unhappiness that I see is because they carry themselves like Atlas. Not because they're bad attorneys, but because they're good attorneys. And they're carrying the weight of their clients on their back. And then they feel like on top of that, a lot of them are carrying the weights of their whole family. They may be a lot of my attorneys are young mothers who have they're carrying more burden and they go home. A lot of fathers that are very involved in kids' lives and those things, and it becomes so important because that's such an important part of who I am. And I think that those things, and it does kind of create the sense of burnout. I love to have attorneys who have worked at another law firm and can come in and see what we have kind of built and what the success part of that. And a lot of times it's just saying simply, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. And you have authority. You're empowered to be able to make decisions. And I think that is so important across that board because burnout's going to happen a little bit. I mean, there's going to be times where you're like, this is tough.
Especially family law, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is, but I feel the same way about our estates. I mean, grandma died, and everybody's fighting about it, and nobody really gets it, and everybody is wanting to take care, or whatever that situation is. And yeah, especially in family law, that sort of sense of like it's on your shoulders, and you can feel it. It's palpable, and our office needs to be a safe place to be able to take that aside and us to be able to say, like, yeah, that sucked. That judge did what? And have those kind of moments that are part of that and be able to build that into your culture where you can say that that's part of what it is, that despite what every diverse part of your day is going to look like, that this is going to be a safe place, whether it's at your home or whether it's in an office or somewhere in between those two. And I think that is very important for us to be cognizant of. And you have to engage to be able to get there. And you're right. If you're spending your time making a trial notebook, you're not engaging with that team. And if you're not engaging with that team, you're going to think, I'm the only one here working. And you start to get that feeling. And I think that's where that seed of issues starts coming in. And you're like, hey, no, wait a second. And that's why you constantly have to talk. And I think that's why, these firms that just operate with a few attorneys meeting and making decisions from above, that recipe is just not going to work. Not
even
anymore.
Like acknowledging the burnout's going to happen, I think is important. Like it's a real thing, and it's okay to kind of have a meltdown sometimes. But as much as operations professionals, if you can mitigate some of that, or at least have that culture that fosters that open kind of dynamic where you're able to have these conversations, like you said, the judge did what? And I think that it fosters the environment of like that camaraderie also, and you're kind of sharing in that experience.
Yeah, and we have to be more intentional than we ever had. I mean, I look around here and I see a lot of different experiences, and and we were talking about the virtue of that we're now virtual offices and those things. But I remember in 2002 when I started, when we had one of those weeks, we were small. We were a small firm, and I could be like, you know what? We're just going to close at 3 today. I'm going to get some drinks, or I'm going to bring everybody coffee and donuts, or whatever it is, and we're going to chat about it. We're going to kind of take that off. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're not intentional about it, that will never happen under. And you have to be able to say, like, okay, what are we going to do? And what's it going to look like? And what I've learned is that I love this new generation of my young attorneys. It's a very different one. They're highly motivated. They've got a lot of different ideas and huge goals and dreams in terms of what they're doing. But there's a community basis that's there that's fine to be through group text messaging, and shared social experiences and whatever those things are, and given that kind of venue and ability to be able to do that, because it's not as easy to just bring in donuts when everybody's having a bad day.
Well, and it's a good point, because you also have to look at the scale of your firm. If you're by yourself, but Brian, you have a much larger firm, 40 some attorneys.
Yeah, 43 attorneys or so,
So
85
you can't
people.
necessarily get them all in the conference room, and,
it's a big
and have
conference
a
room.
powwow. So you have to look at the scale of your firm and what's actually feasible. Do you need to break it out those teams, or our firm, we have weekly meetings with the attorneys, the administrative staff, the paralegals, and then we have a monthly firm meeting. But that may not be feasible depending on the size of your firm.
Yeah, we do firm meetings virtually and all of that, but I will say something that I firmly believe, and that has actually been a very good business decision, but attorneys usually groan and support staff cheers, is appreciation is compensation. Appreciation is not, I appreciate you. And as much as, yes, we do coffee gift cards and we have our round tables and we do things like that, that to me is like normal flow of business. That's not appreciation. Mm-hmm. Yes, I want to acknowledge you for the work you've done with my words and all of these things too, but I want to do it with compensation. I want to do it with promotions. I want to be putting people in places where decisions are made when they have shown that they make good, sound decisions and they're good assets to our firm, regardless of whether an attorney, we have people that have started as file clerks that we now have as associates, that appreciation is compensation. These are not your family members. These are not your friends. These are your staff, right? This is a job at the end of the day. And how we appreciate people is by compensating them fairly for their work. And we can do that when we are operationally making sure that we are efficient and getting paid. Everybody gets paid. Everybody's happier. But I really like what Brian said about how as much as attorneys need to be client-centered, client-focused, all of these things, when you are running the operations, your staff is your clients. And so bringing that same client-centered, experience-driven experience to your firm internally, I think helps it come out externally. And so whether you are a solo or a small firm and you don't have a full-time ops person yet or maybe ever, making sure that you are taking the designated time to wear your ops hat. Where is your dedicated, uninterruptible time that you are working on your business and not in your business, where you take off your lawyer client hat and you put on your operational firm owner, good boss hat, and you're taking the time to make sure that your employees and your staff are also having an experience. Because as much as you say, there's this almost like, this like Yelp mentality of like, I'm going to get a bad review. I had a bad day. One bad thing happened. I'm going to get this.
I'm graded.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so it's this new tech-driven, experience-driven world we're in. We also have to be cultivating those experiences internally. Our staff, ourselves, we have to be having a good work experience. And everything is experience-driven at this point. You can't walk down the street without spotting like 16 Instagrammable moments. The neon and the greenery. And so it's like everything needs to have that feel to it almost, also for our people. Mm-hmm. And so treating my staff like that is my client. Those are the people, this firm and how it runs, and how am I giving this a good internal experience? Because I think that shines through to the external client experience a lot.
You definitely don't have to be focused on growth to focus on those things. It's even if you're fine with the status quo or you want to scale back, all of those things are still important.
Yeah, not every firm is trying to grow.
Right.
Some firms are very happy being solos or being small firms, and that's the goal, is to stay that way.
Sometimes it's so much better.
But that growth, I tell you though, if you do those things, if you care about your people, the growth comes. Mm-hmm. You don't have to ask for it. But I love the fact you brought up compensation. That is absolutely important. I would challenge every law firm, managing partner out there to look at what attorneys in your area are paying and pay 10% more. Shame on you if you're not offering a 401k program, a healthcare program for them. I'll leave the Canadian ones. Congratulations. Maybe you have that figured out. But you need, I know for us, I said, like, I saw the burden on these things, and I said, we got to double down in benefits. We've got to change. We got to change what we offer our people. And even though they don't know that they need that, I realize, because they're 23 coming out of law school, or even younger, because we have so many different ways to get through school now, and they don't know what they need. So it's up to us to be able to say, like, you know what? I want to make sure you're taken care of, because in 5 years you're going to see as you're building your family, these things are coming up. So I think you need, and I really would say to the law firms that are here, double down on your pay, double down on your experience. Clio is going to probably make you 20% more if you're not in Clio right now than when you move to Clio and fully embrace this program. You're going to make 20% more. So you need to make a decision right now on how you're going to spend that 20%. And you heard turnover is the number one problem and the number one way, because suddenly you got 25 cases or 50 cases that you got to get covered by the team that's already feeling overstressed. And that's where stress starts to really develop and bring it up.
Or even worse, I don't know what y'all's industry is like where you're from. It's wildly competitive in Denver, and attorneys get poached all the time from other firms, and then you lose those clients. You're losing money from that, and it's just, if you're not going to pay your people, then they're going to find it somewhere else.
I think burnout and turnover are the biggest enemies of operational efficiency.
Mm-hmm. You're really breaking my heart. We all thought that Denver, there was no stress, that they had solved that.
It's cutthroat.
Well. So much for that benefit program.
That's great, thank you. So now we're at the time where we wanted to see if any of you folks had some questions for the panel here. And there should be, right there, there's someone in the aisle there. If you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and she'll pass the mic over to you.
I like what you're saying about doubling down on benefits. I was curious, and we're trying to do that ourselves as well, offer some really unique things to not only make people feel cared for, but also to attract new attorneys and new staff. I'm curious to know, are there, what unique things or unique double down on type of benefits do you guys offer, or would you recommend offering?
Okay, I'll start. You guys, I know, because, first of all, we obviously one of the big themes of this is what's the new work schedule look like for people? Because that's going to be, we see this as being something that's tangible and people understand that one. But I think that if you're here, that means you're on cloud, and that means that, we're preaching to the crowd right here. You guys are probably all hybrid at least, and probably some kind of format around that. So first of all, I'd say is number one is my attorneys have said it loud and clear. They want hybrid. They don't want to just work at home. So I have to continue to pay for offices and buildings and things like that, but I have to also give them a lot of flexibility to be able to do that. Now for us, we want, I think it's okay to say that's a big benefit, and in exchange, this is what your goals are. And, and everybody in my firm has a number, and are part of that. And, I consider another benefit, if you guys aren't on traction, the book traction, write it down and make sure that you're using that for your firm decisions, and you're getting not just input from your other attorneys in the office. Can you imagine that with these two beside me, that if the lawyer said, no, we're going to make these decisions, you get everybody in the room, including all the way to my intake team, whatever that may be, together so they're driving decisions, which I think is a benefit. But then, like I said, it's pay. It's real simple. It's not difficult. You can take a look and find out what is the pay in your area, and you're going to have to work on it. You may not be able to get there today, and I know that if I'm not talking about getting a top 100 law firm. There's some people that are going to love that. You heard a lot of people leave those, but you need to be in your niche. You need to be the top firm and the firm that attorneys want to go to, and so you've got that. Then, like I said, to me, 401k is a no-brainer. You need to be thinking about their retirement and be able to show what that is. I think that there can be a profit sharing, that depending on your jurisdiction. I know that there's issues about that. I'll just leave it at that. And then you need to have a maternity policy that lets people have children, lets people enjoy some time at home to be able to make a difference. You need to be able to have a a robust holiday schedule along with PTO so they can make their decisions, because apparently young people now, when they have a wedding, it takes 4 days. So you have to, they have one every weekend, so you have to be prepared for that. These are the kind of things, and most importantly, you trust. And you say, like, look, what is important to me? What's important to me for those 43 attorneys to do? Is it that they are at their office working at 7:30 to 6 o'clock? Is that what I want? Or is it an end result that I want? If it's truly an end result that I want, clients to be taken care of, and then to bring in this amount of money and collected amount, then let's just grade them on that. And let my operations managers not be stressed and get gray hair over whether or not somebody took an hour lunch or an hour and a half lunch. And let them stress about what's really important. Is that client being taken care of? Did that person show up for court? Is one person taking on too much burden? Is the seesaw not really working on in that one office? Whatever those things are. Those are much more serious than the small things that we stress out about, because like, oh, is he playing Angry Bird? No, they don't play that anymore. But what's going on in their office? They've been doing that since 1970, whatever. And today it's just like, hey, no, what do I want? And let me give you every tool possible. Because that's all I am at this point. I'm just a resource person. I'm here to see what you need to get better resources to do better for your clients and to take you a little further on your journey as an attorney or as a case manager or as an intake person or a marketing person or accounting person. And you've blessed me with a few years of your life to be able to be here. And while you're here, I want it to be the best place you've ever been. The place where you call your mommy and daddy and you say, I love my job. That's what I want. That's what I want.
I agree. I always say I solve problems I have. I don't solve problems I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to be looking for issues or micromanaging things that don't affect the end goal. Do I care if somebody's sitting there playing Angry Birds? No, not really at all. Do I care if somebody took an hour lunch? Not really. Probably don't even know. Don't care. These are adults. They're working professionals. I care about the output. If the output is happening, the work expectations are met. I am not somebody's parent. I am not somebody's teacher. People don't want to be overseen like that anymore. And I think what's really interesting all around is the next generation of workers. Like I love hiring Gen Z. It's been a really fun experience for the first time in my career to not be the younger person in the room. And so that has been a really fun experience to hire people that have new ideas, fresh things they can tell me. As much as I love tech and I love legal tech, I will get an intern in my office that will show me something new all the time. So I think that listening to people, giving people freedom, and keeping your people happy and just respected as adults, which I think is missing a lot of times often, where especially with remote work. I know it is scary because I see things from the top down. I'm basically, the managing partner calls me the managing half of her brain, so she could just be a lawyer. It's scary. You've got all these clients that it's your name on the door, it's your insurance policy, it's your money, it's all of these things. And so it can be really scary to just let go and let people be and do their job and not feel like you need to make sure. But that stifles creativity, it stifles innovation, it causes bottlenecks. A lot of times what we need to do is trust that we did a good job hiring, right? Bless and release. If it's not a problem, don't solve it.
Kind of trust but verify, though. You still have to, from the operations perspective, there's a lot of things that should be tracked and a lot of metrics that you need to be, things that you can measure should be measured, just because someone, of course you can give someone autonomy and not care how long their break is, but if they're not meeting those goals, you need to know not only what those goals should be, but where they're falling on that line. So things like their utilization rate, how much time they're spending actually doing billable substantive work versus administrative time or generally unproductive time, or how much, you have 100% realization rate, like that's how much you're collecting. Like those are things that can be not only tracked at the firm level, but individually as well. And so you can set those goals, and then if they're hitting it, then, let them do their thing.
And Clio makes that easy.
It's
all
so
it
good.
is,
It's so
just take a look at your
yeah.
dashboard. I have offices. I have offices I have never visited. When you're at that point, you realize that, look, there's no way to do that. I'm not going to stress myself out over it. We're going to make sure we have good people, and we hold them to those. But you do hold them accountable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you say, like, okay, well, this is what it's going to be, because it's not going to be perfect for everybody. As much as I think I can cheerlead their way, to make them that it is, some people are going to be better off at other places. And if that's where it is, or maybe in that point in their life, whatever it is, but it's going to be really clear, because we make it a transparent. Every week, our case managers, our attorneys, there's a scorecard. You know exactly where you are. You know exactly what happened.
You can't possibly make a decision any other way other than that's something that's data-driven.
Right. I base my management on my metrics.
Yes.
And when metrics are met, I don't need to, when they are not, when I can look at my numbers and see something's off, that is when I know that somebody needs more support, more coaching, more training, more oversight, whatever that might be. But I'm basing it on my metrics. I'm not basing it on my impression. Because I will especially say with this new generation of workers, with hybrid work and with remote work, it can be really hard sometimes. You're like, well, I'm not seeing people online. Where's their green dot? To get wrapped up in the part that doesn't matter? Base it on your metrics.
Yeah.
If the metrics are met, let people be. When they're not, it is really easy to see. It does not get out of hand before you see it, because the data is right there if you're utilizing your Clio and you're utilizing the reports. Base your management on your metrics.
And don't hire assholes.
That is super helpful. Great advice.
It's all done in the hiring process.
I
right?
mean, I will say, I think it's probably a mistake most of us have made at one point or another.
It
So,
is.
as funny as it is, it's good advice.
It's now part of my LinkedIn profile. We do not hire assholes. Please don't apply.
And I think there's a question.
Here's a benefit idea for you. Just get rid of your PTO policy. Just get rid of it, right? If you're actually employing people, and I agree 100%, you employ adults, right? So there's an expectation, and that expectation is whatever the metrics are and so on, you can discuss that. Why have a PTO policy? If the metrics are met, the metrics are met. If someone's actually being productive, and the reality of it is, how many people in your office actually take advantage of it? Just get rid of it, right? One of the other things is you spoke about culture, and I've managed law firms for 25 years, more mid-sized firms. And one of the things, if I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody 50 plus tell me that, man, these young attorneys, really, I worked 75 hours. It's like the Monty Python skit, right? I walked to school barefoot, uphill both ways in the snow, and it's incredible. So I think culture is such an important thing, because if you get that right, then that work balance issue becomes so much easier to manage.
Thank you. I think there's a question right over there.
Yeah, this is more of an observation about just listening to you all talk. A benefit, Lydia, it seems to your firm that you all decided when you organized was to niche lawyer. And I think niche lawyering can be such a gift because you can be really good at one thing. And did you all, when you started the firm, did you decide to niche lawyer, or was it something that you later ended up into?
100% intentional decision. I only want to do things I am excellent at. I only want people who work for me to do things that they are excellent at. And I either want to outsource or not to do anything that we are less than excellent at, even if we're good.
But that is such a gift to the attorneys as well as the staff, I would say. And Brian, I want to say you forgot one of the benefits that you give your staff, which I think is so cool, community days. And I know when they join the firm, they think, wait, every month I need to have a community day. But yeah, in Brian's firm, like everyone does something in the community every month, I think. And it gets them involved in the community and they volunteer. And that actually increases, I think, from knowing the members of your firm, their work-life balance. And so I just think that's a cool benefit that I don't think people necessarily think about. Like volunteer time that is not only paid, but also expected.
Lee is awesome, by the way. Stratus Solutions, a fantastic group. And Lee, you're absolutely right. I mean, and to go to that first one, when I started out, I mean, I was freaking scared, right? I mean, like I said, I didn't know money. I was like, I'm going to be a debt-free firm. I don't want to owe anybody any money, so I'm going to try to earn this. And at first, I took whatever came in. Why? Because I was hungry, and I would do whatever it would take. Over time, I realized what kind of atlas format you build. And you realize, our firm, we have 4 different practice areas, really 5 different practice areas, because and instead you kind of niche over time. And you can just see that feeling of when an attorney gets that feeling of like, hey, I know what I'm doing, and I'm good at it. And you know at that point they're locked in. And I think that is so important. And, I think it's interesting because the practices that you guys have, which is crazy, by the way, they have an awesome model. And I think of Lydia and what you're talking about, having attorneys all the way across the country, but still very focused in terms of what they're doing. But I feel the same way about my case managers. And I feel the same way about my non-billable staff, that you want to have something where you really are good at that. And when you have that, it's so much easier when you can find to take one of those hats off and give it to somebody else, and that be what they love. And that's why scaling does, when it comes to operations, you need to be thinking about that. Because some people are going to be great on the phone, and they may not be the person who's going to do that great spreadsheet, or vice versa. But you find that person that can do both of those things, and suddenly you've got synergy and that flywheel is really spinning for you. And I think that's one of the things that when you're away like this, take a big snapshot of your firm and think about what are the strengths. I mean, what Lee was talking about, let them get out there in the community and see what their strengths are. Let them see what it's like to do that volunteer work, and put it up on your LinkedIn and your Facebook page for the firm, or whatever those things are. And that's what builds it up. And you don't have to worry about going to another marketing workshop on whatever it's going to be. Those things will come to you. And those clients that you help will be what markets from that. And then instead of why do I want to give $2,000 more to some billboard company when I can change a kid's life by giving $2,000 to a scholarship fund for them? And that's making a difference for a community. And I really challenge you to think about your marketing and see how it can help. And think about the people you got around you and what they're already doing. And you will see lives change. And I really think that's what we're able to do.
Thank you. We just have a few minutes left. One observation I wanted to share as all 3 of you were speaking was, also reflecting on Jack's keynote that he had this morning about the anti-fragile mindset. All 3 of you had, in each of kind of the responses that you had, talked about creativity. You talked about the power of technology, and also about connection and the human aspect, kind of demonstrating that anti-fragile mindset and kind of what outcomes you can have with that. So I thought that was really cool as well. So I think that's it. We're just finished. We just have a couple minutes left, unless someone has just one quick question for the panel. I think there's someone just in the back corner there.
I hear you have 42 lawyers in your firm. How do you evaluate them? Do you have the standard? How do you evaluate to give them the raise or fire them?
Yeah, for us, that is super structured, our evaluation system. We only do raises once a year. So everybody knows it. I don't get asked all year round for raises or anything else. We know when that's going to happen. But we use a program called TrackStar, and every quarter we do a very detailed update of what's going on. So you have and it's based on our mission statement and vision. So every part of our vision statement, we ask, how are you doing on each one of these things? What does this mean to you? How are you affecting? When we say teamwork, what does that mean for you? When we say advocacy, what does that mean for you? And they get a grade. They grade in their direct supervisor grades. Everybody, including myself, gets graded in terms of that. Raises are simple at that point. By that point, you know about exactly where it's going to be. Everybody has sort of in mind where that's probably going to look like. We have a pretty robust bonus system, so that's how people can increase all the way through the year in terms of that. But it is so important to be intentional about that. In fact, we're hiring a full-time just trainer for our office. That's all they're going to do is just training. Because it's like, this is a skill in itself, is to have somebody who just trains. So when somebody has an issue that we can have, like, hey, not only do we need to work on client communication, but we got a trainer that's going to sit down and make a plan with you on working on that. Because I can't work around that. At some point, you're probably going to have to talk to a client. So we need you to get a little bit better on that because your work product's great in other places. But I do have to terminate employees. It's not something I love doing, but I don't mind doing it. I don't mind sitting down there and having it because usually they know because they've seen their charts for weeks. They know sort of what's going on. And of course, I heard it earlier about that you have to have numbers and measure, and that's important, but we also want to make sure that you're not running off other people in part of that just to meet your numbers. So there is what we try to do is take what might be a soft skill and turn it into a number to maybe sort of make that make a little bit more sense, just so I can understand it, and we can sit down and kind of make that determination. But I don't think we struggle too much on raises and those things. I mean, usually when we all kind of get around, we all kind of have a number what that's going to look like, and usually it's within $1,000 or $2,000 that everybody's like, yeah, that's their next step, and we feel pretty confident in that. And they know the schedule, from the very beginning, what it's going to look like to get to partnership, and we talk about that all the time.
I think transparency surrounding your raises, bonuses, and review system is the best thing you can do. I have worked at so many law firms in the last 10 years where I had absolutely no idea how I was being measured. I didn't know what the rubric was. Everybody's guessing about if there's going to be bonuses, how much they are going to be. There's whispers about how much. These are adults, right? That's not how I want to be. I want to know what I expect to earn. I want to know how I'm being measured, and I deserve to know that at the outset. And so we do reviews every 90 days. The template is readily available to every single person in our firm, what those categories are, what the rubric is, how it's measured. And they also review themselves, and then we review them, and then we talk about it. And another thing is like, I don't issue complaints without solutions. I love that you're going to have a trainer. Because if I'm saying, it does nobody any good for me to say, you're really struggling with XYZ. Good talk.
News to me.
So if I'm noticing a problem, it's literally my job to have the solution. I should definitely be asking that employee for their input, for if there's some support they feel like they need, if they're also noticing they're struggling in this area. But 9 times out of 10, if I'm noticing somebody's struggling in an area, they're noticing they're struggling too, and they welcome that support. I will say we have a attorney bonus structure. It's a little bit more convoluted. After they're over their billables, they get a certain percentage for each hour. So we don't have cliffs, which I think has been an interesting thing that we've chosen to do that has kept people pretty happy. So if you bill 1 hour over your billable requirement, you're going to get bonus for that hour. If you bill 12.5, it's going to be that. And often there's these cliffs built in, which I think can be a little frustrating.
No, I want it to be unlimited.
Unlimited and very clear. But another thing is that basically, if you're staying employed, nobody at my firm would stay employed without a bonus or a raise, right? Because it means you're not meeting goals. So standard across the board, every single person that remains employed at my firm can expect a 10% raise each year and a 10% end of year bonus. And then there's different performance-based bonuses throughout the year. But the fact that every single person knows, this, just there you go, period. This is what's expected. Here's your template, here's your this, and you can expect this. There's a lot of secrecy, and I'm not sure where that came from, but around compensation, performance, these should be open conversations, at least in my state. In California, I can't even ask employees to not share this information. So I like that transparency to come from the top down. I don't want people whispering amongst each other or trying to figure it out. I'm just going to tell you.
That's just another culture issue then, the whispering, it's just fostering this unease. And
unease is a great
word for that.
So yeah, you're going to get in trouble or something. But we do the same thing in our policy guide. We've outlined core competencies that we expect from not only all employees, but then more specific for the attorneys. And so everyone knows what they're going to be measured based off of. So again, not only the metrics, like you said, Brian, there's other things that go into those conversations. And we do assess compensation on an annual basis. Unless there's like a title change or responsibility change, then obviously that warrants an increase. And we do, with the attorneys, have a split salary commission structure. And so there's a number of things that we can play with there. Not only the commission-based percentage that they're being paid, but also their base compensation or their billable hourly rate. And so there's a number of things that you can change that will ultimately increase their compensation. But we do that because it kind of allows them to have some skin in the game as well, and encourages them to meet their goals. And then it kind of allows you to make however much money you want, depending on how much you're working. Of course, within reason, work-life balance reason.
I just noticed, I just had that I think we're a little bit over time,
sorry.
but no problem. But I appreciate everybody here on the stage with me, and thank you everybody for attending today. Thank you.
Thank you all.